So it is officially summertime as of yesterday. And I don't know about you guys, but as I've been scrolling through Instagram and Facebook, I've been noticing that a lot of people, as per usual, are getting married because it's summer. That's time for weddings. And I myself have been invited to 3 weddings this summer, all dear friends of mine. And I even got the pleasure of being a groomsman in one of them. So that was really cool. And I'm wondering, if you're married, do you remember like the details of your wedding, like kind of what went down? Um, and if you're not married, have you ever given thought about, what your wedding may look like? Maybe if you're married, you don't really remember the details of your wedding that much. I have a friend who was married just about a year ago, and he says that his wedding is just kind of a blur. And no, he wasn't drunk or on drugs or anything. He just doesn't remember that much about his wedding. And if this is you, let me help you out a little bit. It started with a bunch of beautiful and sharp looking people walking down the aisle. Grooms, you probably started out at the front, may have been walked down the aisle with your best man. And then after that, followed your relatives and brides, your relatives as well, and they probably walk down the aisle to be seated. And then you have the groomsmen and the bridesmaids, all looking sharp, all looking beautiful. And they walk up, and then you have usually the flower girl or flower boy, and then of course the beautiful bride walks down the aisle. So if you don't remember your wedding that much, I'm guessing that you probably remember who were your groomsmen or who were your bridesmaids. At least I hope you do. And if you're not married, I wonder who would be your bridesmaids? Who would be your groomsmen if you were to get married, tomorrow or something like that? I have a hunch that these people aren't going to be just average people. They're not going to be, Jaden, who was in your middle school history class, who complimented you on your hair one time. It's not going to be your good old neighborhood Jan, who says good morning to you every morning. No, these are going to be your best friends. These are going to be the people who you've cultivated the deepest relationships with. People who you can call best friends. And why is this? Why do we hold our groomsmen and our bridesmaids up with such high esteem? Well, I think it's because we as human beings, we value deep relationship. And we don't just value deep relationship, we need deep relationships. But we live in a world that's full of shallow relationships. We live in a world with Facebook friends and Instagram followers and relationships that stay at the shallow end of the pool and never go into the deep end of the pool. And the problem is we all need these deep relationships. So I would like to spend the rest of the time talking about what constitutes a deep relationship, or if you will, what are the ingredients of a deep relationship. And I'm probably going to be talking about things that you already know, but my goal is to help us think a little bit more clearly about what constitutes a deep relationship so that we can develop them. And at the end, I'm going to ask us to do something that is pretty uncomfortable, but something that needs to be done. The first ingredient to a deep relationship is transparency. Now, transparency is when we share truth about ourselves with others. Now, think of something that's transparent, like a window. A good window, you can see right through it. And in the same way, when we're transparent, we're letting people see into our lives. We're allowing people to see truth about ourselves. And if we were to sum up where we were at on the transparency spectrum with a picture, we may look like this window right here. So you can see that we can see through some parts of this window very well, but other parts of this window you can't see through very well. We're really good at sharing certain aspects of our lives with others because they're relatively easy things to share with others. There's no risk involved. Like, for an example, I'm very much okay with sharing with people that I used to smoke weed in middle school, because one, that was like 11 years ago. It just doesn't seem that relevant anymore. And also, our society has grown a lot more supportive of recreational use of marijuana. So I really have no problem sharing that with others. Though other aspects of my life are a lot harder to share because they're a lot more risky, which leads me to my next point. The second ingredient to a deep relationship is vulnerability. It's when we become transparent. It's when we share truth about ourselves with others that's not necessarily safe. It's risky stuff to share. It's when we open ourselves up to either being very much loved or very much not loved, very much accepted or very much rejected. I know, it's scary, but it's only when we become vulnerable, when we allow the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves to be loved. So that brings me to the next ingredient, which is love. And when I say love, I mean the want to meet and to try to meet the various needs of a person, place, or thing. So us human beings, we have all kinds of needs. We have physical needs, we have emotional needs, we have the need for compassion. We have the need for people to listen to what we have to say. We have the need to be accepted. And by the way, when I say being accepted, I don't necessarily mean for us to accept people's behavior all the time, because sometimes people's behavior is very harmful to them, and to accept someone's behavior actually means to not meet their needs. So, but the acceptance that I'm talking about is the want to and the pursuit of accepting the person, not necessarily the actions, but the person themselves. Coming to a place and saying, you're messed up, I'm messed up, we're all messed up. Therefore, you're in good company, and I accept you wherever you're at. Receiving love and giving love is the end goal of any deep relationship. So very, very important. The fourth ingredient in order to build a deep relationship is trust. And you might be thinking, duh, because it's so obviously important for so many reasons. I mean, for an example, it's hard to become transparent and vulnerable with somebody without having trust, right? I mean, it's really hard to become transparent and vulnerable with somebody who you think there's a high probability of them rejecting you rather than accepting you when you share with them your stuff, right? And on the contrary, it's a lot easier to become transparent and vulnerable with somebody who you think is going to accept you, when you share with them these things. So, but the main point that I want you guys to get is that you're not going to be able to build the trust that you need in order to build a deep relationship without first becoming transparent and vulnerable with somebody. Now you might be thinking, no, I mean, I become transparent and vulnerable when I first have the trust, right? The trust comes first. And okay, I grant you that I think you're half right. So let me explain this. I think there is two forms of trust, and you need both of them in order for there to be a deep relationship. The first kind of trust is called secondary trust, and the second one is primary trust. So secondary trust is the trust that you build with somebody without becoming transparent and vulnerable with them. And it's primarily built by you observing how they handle situations where other people become transparent and vulnerable. Do they accept the person or do they reject the person? If they accept the person, then you build that secondary trust, and it's easier to become transparent and vulnerable with them. But the second form of trust that you need is primary trust. And that trust is only built when you yourselves become transparent and vulnerable with them. It's the trust you build when they accept you, not accepting somebody else. So it can only be built if you first become transparent and vulnerable. I mean, think about your best friend. I'm guessing that you trust your best friend. And yeah, I mean, at first you probably built the secondary trust with them, but at some point you took a leap of faith. You trusted them with your stuff. And I'm guessing if you're still best friends with them, they accepted you rather than rejected you. You know, they healed rather than hurt. So the big thing I'm trying to say is that we all need to take that leap of faith if we're going to build the trust that constitutes a deep relationship. The fifth and final ingredient to a deep relationship in my book is mutuality. So deep relationships are a two-way street, not a one-way street. So they require both parties to become transparent and vulnerable and receive love from one another in order for relationships to flourish. I think it happens more often than we give it credit for one person in a relationship to feel close with that person, but that person to not feel close with them. Maybe, you know, we became transparent and vulnerable and received love from somebody, but that person hasn't become transparent and vulnerable and therefore hasn't received love from us, or vice versa. And this can happen for a variety of reasons. Some of the reasons are out of our control. You know, for example, a person may have serious trust issues and therefore just, you know, can't open up and therefore will not receive the love that they need from us. But sometimes, actually, let me rephrase, a lot of times this happens for reasons within our control. You know, for example, maybe a person became transparent and vulnerable with us before, and we did not love them like we should have, and we hurt rather than healed. And maybe we are too busy talking about our own stuff, so they literally don't have time to talk about their stuff. So if these are the cases, we are in need of correction here. We need to correct our behavior. Deep relationships are a two-way street, not a one-way street. Don't make them a one-way street. Nobody likes one-way streets. So we've spent a lot of time talking about, you know, the ingredients of a deep relationship, but I never actually defined what I believe a deep relationship is. You know, the ingredients, they hinted at it, but right now I'm going to define it. So a deep relationship is a relationship where love is mutually given to the other's whole person. So it's a relationship where one loves not only the glamorous side of the other, but the not so glamorous side of the other, and vice versa. So I like to think about it like this. You know, half of us is glamorous, and the other half of us is not so glamorous. So both of those halves are just as much a part of us as the other. So a deep relationship is when both halves are loved. And if we are not transparent and when we are not vulnerable with somebody, it's like we're only half of us is being loved. And that, my friends, is a recipe for a very shallow relationship. But if we take that leap of faith, if we become transparent and we become vulnerable, then we allow both halves of ourselves to be loved. We allow our whole self to be loved. And that, my friends, is a deep relationship. So I'm curious who were your present or future bridesmaids or groomsmen. Were they people that you know, used to have a deep relationship with? Could you not even think of anybody? Or maybe there are people who you currently have a deep relationship. Maybe there are people that you have the kind of relationship that we were talking about with them. And if so, I encourage you to keep pursuing those relationships. But if you were the former too, I encourage you, you know, if you used to have a like really good relationship with these people, I encourage you to rekindle those relationships with at least two of them. And if you couldn't think of anybody, you know, start fresh. You know, take that leap of faith with somebody and start at least two deep relationships with other people. And the reason why I say two is because I don't think it's healthy to just have one deep relationship. The reason why is because that person is not perfect and they are not going to love you when you need to be loved at times. Also, I don't think it's fair to dump all of your burdens onto one person. It's not healthy for you and it's not healthy for them. They are not Superman or Superwoman. They are going to hit their limits and they're going to hit a point where they are unable to sacrifice more for you. I know it sounds terrible, but that's just life. So that's why I think it's really healthy to have at least two deep relationships in your life. So husbands, that means that your wife isn't your only deep relationship in your life. And wives, that means that your husband is not your only deep relationship in your life. Boyfriends and girlfriends, same thing. You know, I think it's important to have at least two. And the more the merrier, right? So that is the call to action. Take the leap of faith. Do it. Develop those deep relationships. Develop those relationships where love is mutually given to the other's whole person. Before you go, I have a few questions that I think it would be really awesome if you guys shared the responses in the comments. So the first question is, do you think there are any essential ingredients to deep relationships that I left out? The second question, who are two people in your life that are really good friends? What has made you become such good friends with them? Number 3, are you making a commitment to go deeper with someone in your life? And number 4, how did it go? Was it rewarding? Did it cave on you? What was the result? So that would be awesome if you guys shared your responses in the comments. And also feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel. I have a video coming out very shortly on social media. So it's going to be about how social media relates to everything that we talked about in this video. So yeah, thanks for watching and I hope you guys have a good day.